In this video, I want to talk about traits, otherwise known as techniques in Anime Last Stand. Now, traits are just a bonus way to get extra stats on your units, but they are actually probably the most influential thing in the game, because you can get some crazy traits like this, which are going to give you a lot of stats. Now, these are going to be pretty luck-based, but there are a lot to choose from, so I'm going to let you guys know in this video which ones you should invest your time into. Let's go. I want to start by talking about the rarest trait in the game, Glitched. Now, there are a lot of people who think because this trait is the rarest, and to be fair, it is usually the strongest, that their team should look something like this. But that is very far from the truth. Ugh, this is nasty. Get this off my screen. Do not build your team like this. Glitch does have some drawbacks, okay? It is going to always be the strongest for damage on pretty much every unit in the game, but there are a couple drawbacks with not having the most money. So if you were to get this on Speed Cart, it is going to be worse than something like Entrepreneur. It does not have the highest range, and there are some units in the game that can greatly benefit from having more range than this. And then it also has a 2 placement limit, which, to be honest, it's not really going to make that much of a difference, especially for overall damage because of this crazy buff that it gives, but the 2 placement limit can hurt you with some units like Jotaro that benefit from having 4 placements. Overall, if you are lucky enough to roll this trait, definitely keep it. It is probably going to be the strongest most of the time, but there are some other options, and I think having a diverse pool of traits on your team is definitely going to help you in the long run. Moving on from the rarest trait in the game, Glitched, we're going to go up to the most common Celestial trait, All-Seeing, with a 0.35% chance. Now, most of the time you're going to get this trait, you're probably going to be pretty unhappy with it, because you probably want something more like Overlord or Shinigami, but All-Seeing actually does have its benefits and can be the best trait on some units, specifically units that either have full AoE attacks or abilities, or they are multi-hit with low SPA. Now this trait is going to give us 75% bonus range, 30% bonus crit chance, and 100% bonus crit damage, which may seem underwhelming compared to some traits we're going to talk about in this video, but I still think it is a great trait, and it's actually probably the best on some support units that are full AoE and are mostly used to apply some sort of status effect onto the field. For example, Garo, very great trait to have on that unit. And also, any unit that is multi-hit or has low SPA to benefit from the crit chance and crit damage whole thing, and it can definitely help with building skill trees and stuff. A very good trait, very underrated, but let's go ahead and move on. The next trait I want to talk about is Entrepreneur, and you can believe me when I say I know a lot about this trait, okay? And you do not want to have it on pretty much any unit. However, this trait can be actually the best on some units, only farms, okay? Only units that are going to make you money, such as Feed Cart or Businessman Yojin. Right, you want to get Entrepreneur on these units because Entrepreneur is going to give us a 45% money increase, which is actually more than Glitched. Now, Glitched can be the best trait on some farms, like Yojin, as I mentioned, because he has a 1 placement, so having the 2 placement limit would benefit him more than just the cash, but Entrepreneur on somebody like Speed Cart is going to be the best trait. And for the damage side of things, the 25% boost, 5% range, 10% SPA is actually going to be significant. It's going to be pretty good on units that are 4 to 5 placement, units that are not going to benefit as much from having something like Overlord, which we'll get into later. So Entrepreneur can still be pretty solid, but for the most part, you want to avoid this trait, except for on-farm units. The next trait I want to talk about is going to actually be 2 at the same time, Shinigami and Overlord. Now these traits are going to have the same chance of obtainment with a 0.2% chance, and the buffs they're going to give and the best time to use them are going to be pretty much complete opposites of each other, because Shinigami is going to give us an 80% damage increase, 30% range increase, and 20% SPA reduction, and then Overlord is going to give us a 375% damage buff, which is crazy, 5% range, and 15% SPA reduction, with a 1 placement limit. Now, you may think this is pretty simple, and that Shinigami is going to be best for 3 to 4 placement units, and then Overlord is going to be best for 1 to 2 placement units, if you do the math on that, and you'd be right for the most part. But you also have to keep in mind that having a 1 placement unit is going to actually save you a lot more cash, because you don't have to spend as much upgrading 4 units or 5 units, although you will get more damage value out of Shinigami on units that are high placement. Overlord is going to save you a lot of cash, and I would actually recommend using Overlord over Shinigami most of the time for units that you're going to use in progressive game modes. The only time Shinigami is really going to outshine it is if you have enough cash to actually max out all of the units that have Shinigami to get more value out of their 80% damage on each of them than the 375 on one of them. So to put it into simple terms, Shinigami is going to be best in Infinite and on units that are 3 to 4 placement, and then Overlord is going to be the best for progression and units that are 1 or 2 placement. However, Overlord is not going to be best on units that are damage over time, and we're about to talk about that right now, so Overlord should only be used for raw damage, same goes for Shinigami, because there are 2 other traits that you want to get for damage over time, which are going to be Glitched, and the next one, Avatar. Avatar is probably going to be the next best trait behind Glitch, with a 0.1% chance of obtainment, making it a lot easier to get, and this trait is going to give us 350% extra damage, 10% extra range, 15% SPA reduction, 1 placement limit just like Overlord, and then 4x dot damage. Now the 350% damage is going to be less than Overlord, so for raw damage, Overlord is still going to be a little bit better, but where Avatar really shines is going to be the 4x dot damage, which is going to help units like Guts, or really anybody with Bleed, Burn, Electrified, any damage over time effects. They will benefit a lot more from Avatar than Overlord or Shinigami. Now Avatar is also kind of in a weird spot where Shinigami and Overlord can be better than it in some cases, and rule of thumb, Shinigami is always going to be better for the 3 to 4 placement units, and Overlord's always going to be better for the 1 to 2, like we talked about, unless they have a damage over time effect. Now if they have a damage over time effect like Bleed, or Burn, or Hemorrhage, or Conquer, Avatar is going to give them a 4x dot damage, which is going to make a huge difference compared to the extra 25% damage that Overlord gives. But if a unit is only raw damage, or has a very low scaling on its damage over time effect, for example units with Electrified has a very low scaling of 0.35x damage, right? They're going to benefit a lot more from just the raw damage of either Overlord or Shinigami, versus the damage over time bonus from Avatar. So to put it into simple terms, if your unit has something like Burn, or Bleed, or Hemorrhage, they're going to benefit a lot from either Avatar or Glitched. Of course, Glitched has a 6 times dot damage, which is a lot better. So that's when you're going to go for Avatar. Otherwise, just raw damage, go for Shinigami or Overlord, depending on how many placements the unit is. Also, as a side note, don't be sad if you get Overlord or Shinigami on a unit with a damage over time effect, because Avatar is of course going to be better, the damage over time is going to be huge, but Overlord and Shinigami are still going to increase your base damage quite significantly, which is going to increase what the damage over time does, because that is directly scaling off of your damage. So we've talked about all the meta traits in the game, the best of the best, Celestial or above, but what if you can't get lucky enough to get any of these traits? What should you go for instead? So now I'll talk about the mythics or below traits and what you should go for as either a starting player or a really unlucky one. Out of all the mythic traits, let's talk about Cosmic and Demigod first, and Demigod is pretty much going to be Avatar, where it is going to give you the most flat damage, which is going to benefit damage over time more than units with Cosmic, where they're going to get SPA, and that's going to benefit more overall DPS. So Cosmic can be used as a replacement to Shinigami or Overlord, and Demigod can be used as a replacement to Avatar or Glitched for the damage over time units. The only other 2 traits we have are Vulture and Diamond is pretty much going to be a replacement to Entrepreneur with a 20% money increase, so you want this on farm units and pretty much nothing else. And then Vulture is going to be a replacement to All-Seeing, which is going to give us a 25% range increase, 5% crit chance, and 15% crit damage. The actual damage increase you get from the crit is not very important, so I'd only recommend getting this on a full AoE support unit, similar to how you'd want to get All-Seeing on a full AoE support unit, but Vulture is going to be a lot worse. So that is every important trait in the game covered. Personally, I don't think you should go for anything below Mythic because trait rerolls are pretty easy to farm. And just so you know that I kind of understand what I'm talking about with these traits, I'll show you that I actually do have pretty much every trait in the game. At some point I've unlocked it and I've used it, right? So I'm not just telling you random nonsense, I actually know what I'm talking about a little bit. I've experienced these traits myself and have kind of learned who you should go for and what you should go for on who, pretty much. But yeah, thank you for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. I know a lot of you were asking me like what build should I go for on Guts or Sun Jin Woo, specifically damage over time units, and I hope that this video kind of cleared it up for you. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next one, and have a great day.